Hi guys, I've got a page in my Traveler's Notebook today for the Pink Paislee design team, and I'm going to use the brand new Again and Again collection. Now, one of the things I love the most in this collection is this printed gold foiled vellum. It is just stunning. So I'm basically basing my whole page off that. I've got this sunrise photo, very early in the morning sunrise photo, and I decided to document that in my notebook because this line is so much about the beauty of every day, which I am super about too. I don't think there's any reason that you can't document something as simple as a sunrise in your traveler's notebook. It doesn't have to be a momentous occasion for every photo. And so what I'm doing is just going through the papers in this collection, and I want to pick out two different papers that go both with my photo and with the printed vellum, because it's I'm working in my pocket page notebook today, so you are going to be able to see all of this all in one go. So it is important that all of these papers go nicely with each other. So I've chosen this really beautiful dark wood grain paper and this pretty pink diamond pattern. I love the colours in this collection. They're quite sort of muted and warm, and there's plenty of pinks in there, so you know I'm happy with that. I've trimmed down those two papers to fit into my notebook, and I'm just trimming out my photo as well. The photo is going to go on sort of, I'm going to call it the back page of this spread, and I'm going to create a little title cluster here in the pocket. To do that, I'm going to use this cut apart paper. I really loved this sentiment in there. There is beauty in simplicity, and I thought that would work nicely as my title. So I'm just trimming that out super easy with scissors. I probably could have used my paper trimmer if I wanted to. And there are these sort of pattern paper strips in here, so I figured I've already cut into this paper, why not use these as well rather than chopping into my brand new 12 by 12 sheets. I'm going to have to make sure that I work on both sides of this cluster at once, because the vellum is partially transparent. I mean, it's not completely transparent, but it's going to be in my pocket of my pocket page notebook. So when I flip that over, you are going to be able to see the back of whatever I stick onto the front of it. So because I'm sticking down this piece from the cut apart sheet, the title here, on the back you'll be able to see the back of that paper plus any glue that I've used. So I need to be able to work on both sides of that to cover it up. I was just trimming it down slightly smaller because otherwise it was going to take up the whole side of that insert, and I just want it to be more like a cluster. So I trimmed that down a little bit, and I'm going to hang that off the edge of my vellum. You'll see exactly what I mean in just one second. And I decided to use the same paper, the back of that cut apart, to back this cluster on this side, because it's a really subtle pattern, not quite as pink as the front page, so it will be perfect for adding my journaling on. So you can see what I mean about hanging things off the edge of my vellum here. I'm just making sure that I'm going to fit the Y of beauty on there. It's going to cut off just the tail of that, which just adds just a little bit of interest to the page. So now you can see what I mean about covering up the back. That piece that I cut out did have lines for journaling on there, and I did think about using those, but they were going to run the wrong way on the cut apart piece for me to use it. And same with this pattern strip that I cut out. I decided in the end not to use that. The blue, I haven't used any of this navy blue anywhere else on the page yet, so I didn't add that, but I quite liked this little, I'm going to call it a journaling spot. It's not quite a label, it's sort of in between both of those things. So it's the same width as the strip that was on the other side, which meant all of that covers up each other nicely, so you can't see any glue through either side of the vellum. Now there's this little embellishment pack in the Again and Again collection, again and again, what a mouthful, and it has paper clips, a little enamel enamel shapes, little enamel shapes, and some wood veneer. And just to add a little bit of dimension to the page, I'm going to stick on my paper clip here. It sort of looks kind of flag-like, I guess. You could totally use that at the top of a page too, as a sort of pennant banner kind of thing, but I'm just going to add it on to the side of my vellum piece here. It'll kind of end up looking like it's holding all of the cluster together. Now from the stamp set in the collection, I do end up using some navy blue ink for this. I'm going to stamp a couple of the sentiments onto this little spot here, not use that for the journaling as it's probably intended. I'm going to do my journaling on the little, the background paper that I cut there. Now some of these stamps are quite tiny, teeny tiny, so I wanted to make sure it was going to stamp properly before I went ahead and stamped that onto my actual finished piece here. And as you can see, it didn't stamp that well. I used a grey ink for the second little piece, and this is a super juicy ink pad, too juicy. It makes it really hard to get a clean impression, so that's why I tested it first. I wanted to make sure that I could get a clean one, which eventually I did, and I just trimmed that out, and I'm going to stick that down again just to add an extra layer to this cluster here. The back side of this cluster was looking pretty good, but the front side just needs sort of a third element. There's really only the two on there, and I just wanted to add a little bit more decoration. So I'm going to stamp some of these. Now look, I'm sure that they're moths, but I'm going to call them butterflies because it makes it less creepy for me. I'm not a mega fan of moths, but I'm going to call these butterflies. I know that they're moths. I can see their little fluffy antennas there, but I'm going to say butterflies. I've just used that same navy blue ink and the same background paper from the back of the cut apart sheet, and I'm just stamping a few of these different moth butterflies onto here. There are 3 in the stamp set. I'm only going to end up using these 2. And then I'm going to fussy cut them out, which isn't quite as tedious as I thought it was going to be. I stamped way more than I actually need. I'm only going to end up using 3, so I picked the 3 best impressions and trimmed those out with my scissors. As you can see, it didn't take that long, and it just gives me that third element that I'm looking for, a different sort of texture, and brings in just a tiny bit of that navy blue. I didn't want too much of the navy blue, but because there is some blue in my photo, it makes sense to add just a little bit onto the front here. So I just glued 1 butterfly down onto my cluster, which I'm happy about. That gives me my sort of third element there. And I just want to add the other 2 onto the left hand side to give me that visual triangle, but the paper is just, it was looking a tiny bit too plain, and I kind of want to highlight the vertical elements in the vellum. So all of those columns of gold foil triangles are so pretty. So I decided to echo that on the left hand side, and I'm using one of the stamps from the stamp set that says Note to Self, and I'm just going to sort of randomly stamp that in a vertical pattern up the page. Now I'm not stamping it directly above each one. I'm sort of offsetting it a little bit. It gives me the vertical look, but it's not quite so rigidly vertical, if you get what I mean. It also gives me a landing place for these butterflies rather than just having them randomly plonked onto the page. And I love that the background that those butterflies are stamped onto, moths, okay, I know, are lighter than the pink, so that does help them stand out. Now I can't help it, there's these really pretty enamel shapes, and I do have to use some of those too, again to help bring in just that little bit of blue, those wee touches. I'm going to use blue and gold, and I'm just adding a couple to the left and a couple to the insert, and I will end up adding a couple more onto my photo, the page with my photo on it, once I flip this page over and start working on the back. Now I'm totally happy with how this side of the spread looks, so I'm going to go ahead and stick this paper into my notebook. You can see the reverse side of that paper there, which is so pretty as well, really pretty pink floral. And before I go ahead and stick my insert into the pocket, I just need to add a couple of lines of journaling. And I did have a navy blue pen, so I used that to just add a tiny note about what an amazing start to the day it is when you get up early enough to capture a sunset like that, a sunrise like that. Now, because I've added the paper clip onto the vellum, I did need to trim the vellum piece just a tiny bit on the left-hand side, just to take up the bulk that paper clip does add to it. I'm just checking for the placement of my photo, and then I can go ahead and stick this down. This page is going to be super quick. I'm not going to add very much to this at all, but I do want to add a couple of stamps or sentiments from the stamp set onto my photo. I love stamping on photos, and I'm going to use that same navy blue ink. If you have issues stamping onto photos, it's more likely to do with the photo paper rather than the ink that you're using. This is just a dye ink, and I print at home on Canon Photo Glossy 2 paper, which is designed to take ink, any sort of ink. I mean, obviously it's designed for an inkjet printer, but that means that it takes stamping ink just as beautifully. So I've added my 2 sentiments, and again I'm going to add a couple of these little enamel dots to tie the whole thing together, and then all I've got left to do is to glue this into my page. And then this is my page, in a very simple page of everyday beauty in my notebook. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there's a couple more videos on screen, or check out my Patreon page because there are even more videos over there. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!